And we've just had a reaction to the resignation of Morgan McSweeney from Keir Starmer, the leader of the Conservative Party. This is what she said on X. She said, "It's about time. But once again, with this Prime Minister, it's somebody else's fault. Mandelson lied to me or Morgan advised me. Keir Starmer has to take responsibility for his own terrible decisions, but he never does." And that statement they issued on X in just the past few seconds by Keir Starmer, the leader of the Conservatives. Let's bring in our deputy political editor, Sam Coates. So, Sam, predictably, a reaction to Morgan McSweeney's resignation has started coming in, and from Keir Starmer saying that the Prime Minister always says it's somebody else's fault.
That's right. Keir Starmer has had Morgan McSweeney at his side ever since he became leader of the Labour Party and then Prime Minister. The pair were said to be indivisible. We now get to find out whether they are indeed divisible or whether Keir Starmer could end up paying the ultimate price without his most long-standing, most senior advisor. Morgan McSweeney, according to some, effectively put Keir Starmer in the leadership role of the Labour Party, orchestrating his leadership campaign in the back half of 2019. Now he is gone as a figure seen amongst many in the Labour Party as being too toxic, too factional, fighting too many of his own. But to his supporters, somebody who delivered Labour a landslide majority in July 2024 is the only reason that the Labour Party was able to root out what many saw as the scourge of anti-Semitism and to deliver the victory for Keir Starmer. To his supporters, Morgan McSweeney was the brain and the nous and the shrewd direction of this operation. To his detractors, Morgan McSweeney was somebody who was guiding the Labour Party away from its values. You heard the statement from Morgan McSweeney. He says he was not directly involved in the vetting of Peter Mandelson. But there was one definite truth that I think everybody in Westminster knew, which was that Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson were also almost indivisibly close. The pair spoke on an almost daily basis when Peter Mandelson was ambassador in Washington. The pair have had a relationship stretching back many, many years, arguably before even Keir Starmer was somebody that Morgan McSweeney worked with closely. Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson consulted one another on the September reshuffle last year. And in the end, it was just, it wasn't that long afterwards that we saw, just before we saw Mandelson being forced to resign as ambassador over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. This is a great, great moment of peril for the Prime Minister. There are those who are not sure whether Number 10 in its current form, with its current group of personnel around the Prime Minister, left around the Prime Minister, can cope with what is likely to come its way. You can see already, and certainly I'm getting messages, the turbulence ahead, the scale of the criticism ahead. There'll be calls now for Keir Starmer to change direction. The question, Barbara, is can Keir Starmer find a new way of governing that manages to settle the critics and calm nerves? This, a man, of course, just on Thursday in Chequers, just as he did on Wednesday in the House of Commons, said that he wouldn't dispense with Morgan McSweeney. It was just a few hours ago on Trevor Phillips' show that Pat McFadden, the Work and Pension Secretary, said that there would be no point in dispensing with Morgan McSweeney. Just a few hours ago, this government was lining up to hold on to the man that you can see on your television sets right now. Now he is out. The question is, how big a hole does that leave?
And I guess another question I have, Sam, is whether this will be enough to appease the many, many backbenchers who are furious with the Prime Minister over what's happened over Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, the question is, I think, is absolutely right. But the question, the heart of it is, you know, what do people think the real problem here was? Yes, it was an issue about the appointment of Peter Mandelson, but was it an issue more broadly of the Prime Minister being persuaded to take in to government somebody who instinctively he didn't massively trust and had kept at arm's distance for a large part of the general election campaign and had his doubts about at points, but somebody who could be persuaded by powerful advisors into doing a particular thing? Or is the problem a Prime Minister who generally just doesn't have enough sense of direction himself and is prone to listening to whoever is the last person that he talked to, making it unclear what the direction ultimately of his government is, leading to so many U-turns, meaning that it can't back down? In other words, was the problem one advisor, or is the problem the man at the top? That is the kind of conversation that the Labour Party is having at the moment. That's why there is talk of leadership challenge as well. There are some who think that this might hasten the downfall of Keir Starmer. What is definitely true, however, right now, and I'm sure that Number 10 will be hoping this stems the sort of bleeding for a while, but all of those who have been circling a potential talked about successors are in their own way going to struggle right now. Angela Rayner, former Deputy Prime Minister, still hasn't settled her tax affairs with HMRC. Andy Burnham, well, he's not fighting the Gorton and Denton by-election and maybe saved the defeat in that Peter Mandelson's revelations may well have caused, but nevertheless is not in Parliament. And Wes Streeting, part of the wing that had Peter Mandelson and held Peter Mandelson aloft, close ties to him in the past, doesn't necessarily make him an obvious choice at the moment. And other cabinet ministers, well, there's little sign of them having geared up to test, and certainly no sign in the polling that the public would really appreciate any of them replacing Keir Starmer. So the Labour Party right now in a rut with no obvious direction to take it that will make things better. You've got a Prime Minister who we continually read as incredibly angry, and was a little suspicion of emotion in politics when it's briefed out so explicitly, but it is just simply not clear what is going to happen right now. Lots of reaction coming in sort of as we speak. Let me tell you what one supporter of Morgan McSweeney, who works in government right now, said just a few moments ago. They said Morgan ran the Labour Party from top to bottom during opposition and was the single point of clarity amidst the chaos of government. Those that thought he was the problem will surely now see that he solved far more crises than he caused. Stormy seas ahead. So that is somebody who saw Morgan McSweeney up front and up close in government and thinks that he was doing a very good job, thinks that he was steadying the waters and organising what otherwise would be a chaotic, even more chaotic Number 10, and thinks that things will get worse as a consequence of his departure. I think for others, though, the number of Labour MPs that were increasingly coming out and saying Morgan McSweeney must go, well, that suggests that McSweeney's departure, which is presented to the media as a resignation, aren't they always, is something that will also be seen as something of a political necessity by others in Number 10 in order to save the Prime Minister's skin, because he is so clearly on the ropes with his own side. So I think there will be a mix of opinions. The question is, can Keir Starmer quickly get back to looking like he's got much more of a grip than he does? His next electoral test, well, that is in under 2 weeks. That's with the Gorton and Denton by-election. There, Labour have held that seat for a long time, ever since its creation. But now the Reform UK and the Greens are running aggressive campaigns to challenge Labour for that seat. So there could be a by-election at which the Prime Minister's authority is tested in just a little bit later this month. And then the big test, elections in Scotland, in Wales, in London, in Manchester, and elsewhere around the country, which is seen as a massive moment. It's after that that many people believe that if there is to be a leadership challenge, that is the most likely. Events happening far faster, however, to damage the Prime Minister than anybody predicted at the beginning of the year. I have to wonder, is this the end of the bloodletting, though, Barbara? There were suggestions over the weekend that another big figure of this regime could be out the door. That's Chris Wormold, the cabinet secretary appointed not that long ago by Keir Starmer. The suggestion was that Wormald and McSweeney might be out before long. That was denied on Friday night, but so too was McSweeney's departure as well, which was denied. As so often, I am very sad to say with this government, a denial from number 10 doesn't necessarily mean that things aren't true. So we will wait and see.